Final Fantasy is definitely one of the most hyped sets of this year. If you're not a fan of Universes Beyond, I can understand that perhaps for you it's not going to do much, but I think for the general player base, this is something people are really excited about. And while we won't be getting any full set spoilers or anything like that for months, we did get some previews today of the Commander decks, and there should be some additional previews tomorrow for vendor distribution purposes, and so I will be covering that as well. But we've got 4 decks to take a look at today, and I think they're pretty interesting from a, at least a face commander perspective. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the video. And if you guys do enjoy, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe, and then click the bell icon if you want to be notified when new videos are posted. So there are 4 commander decks here. The first one is called Revival Trance. It is red, white, black, and the face commander is Terra, Herald of Hope. We are actually going to take a look at the actual commanders in just a minute here as well, but I wanted to at least go over the actual decks first. So we've got the Limit Break, which is red, green, white, and this is Cloud X Soldier as the face commander here. Very much equipment based, and it also says raise your stats past 7 power. This is obviously themed around Final Fantasy VII. All 4 of these decks are themed around a different Final Fantasy game. I don't have a ton of knowledge about Final Fantasy outside of a very limited bit of a couple of games I've interacted with, but I do think the designs are really cool, and I'm excited about it just for the kind of, I think, energy it's going to inject into the game. We've got Counter Blitz, which is green, white, blue. It's based on adding counters and then also maybe moving some counters around to different things, which is kind of interesting. We've seen a few cards do things like that, but we'll take a look and see if this is going to be something more unique. We've also got Scions and Spellcraft, which is white, blue, black, and the face commander here is based on, well, I guess drawing as well as dealing damage when you cast non-creature spells, so probably going to be a lot of lower cost cards in here to maximize that. There are also going to be collector's editions of these decks, which is interesting because Fallout did not have collector's edition decks, and I don't think we had any other big Universes Beyond after Fallout last year. Assassin's Creed, I guess. But I don't think Assassin's Creed had any decks at all, so it's kind of irrelevant. These are likely going to end up being $150 a piece, at least at retail. Whether or not they end up being more is going to depend entirely on if there's a bunch of broken cards in them and, new cards, reprints, whatever. But it's looking like probably $70 and $150 respectively, which is the same it was for the Warhammer 40k collector decks, and yeah, so I guess it's nice to see that. I do think the sealed value of these collector's edition decks should do well over time because it is Final Fantasy, and they are going to be Surge foil, which is like that foil styling from Lord of the Rings, and I think Doctor Who and Fallout had them as well. It's kind of become synchronous with Universes Beyond as a whole. Even though I really like the Ripple foil they did with Modern Horizons, I think it'd be cool to see that brought back here on some stuff, but maybe they will for a future product like that. So let's take a look at the actual commanders here. So we've got Y'shtola Knight's Blessed. It is 1 white, blue, black, legendary creature, cat, warlock, with vigilance, and at the beginning of each end step, if a player lost 4 or more life this turn, you draw a card. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell with mana value 3 or greater, Y'shtola deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life. So it reminds me of Valgavoth, but it's a little different for obviously a few reasons. One being that it doesn't matter which end step it is. So if you're able to make things happen that players can lose life during other people's turns, you can get a lot of cards going around the table with this, which I think is good. But also just casting non-creature spells with mana value 3 or greater to burn the opponent. If you have a way to reduce the cost of some of those things and cast them during an opponent's turn, you can then maximize the draw while also doing some ping damage. It's pretty good that they did make it 3 or greater, because if it was just like a 1 or 2, I could see this card being just completely busted. So it's nice that check and balance kind of exists there, but I do think it's cool. I obviously can't make too big of a judgment on how it's going to function as a deck without seeing what other cards are going to be in there, and if there's other things that'll support it, but it's a cool design. Not familiar, like I said, with the character or anything like that, but just on the surface, I could see this being something that people will like. And you obviously have access to a pretty good amount of non-creature spells, both in white and blue. I think black has, some decently higher cost, but I don't know how many they have that are like instants you can cast. I have to kind of look around and do a little bit of, this is just my initial sort of like quick reaction versus like a full breakdown. Maybe we'll do a deep dive on these decks as more of them get spoiled down the line. Now we've got Tidus, Yuna's Guardian, and this one again, green, white, blue, legendary creature, human warrior. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may move a counter from a target creature you control onto a second target creature you control. Then it has the cheer ability. Whenever one or more creatures you control with counters on them deal combat damage to a player, you may draw a card and proliferate. Do this only once each turn. So proliferate obviously really works well within these colors. I think that's going to be open the door for a lot of possibilities, especially if you're utilizing the +1/+1 counters or poison counters. Obviously plenty of other counters to choose from as well. I like the ability to move them. I think if you have ways to get like a couple counters out quickly and then you can kind of move them around and start proliferating, you can make things really beefy really quickly. There's obviously a ton of different ways that this can be taken, but it feels unique. It feels like there is a lot of fun interactions with this, especially within its colors. So I think it's going to be solid. Again, there are definitely things we need to wait and see in terms of what else the deck will get and kind of what people come up with, because there are thousands upon thousands of cards, and it's just, I lack the ability to immediately come up with things off the top of my head that will just be like busted with this, but it's a thing to kind of sit down and dig through, and I do like it on the surface. It seems like it's going to be a fun commander to build around. Now we've got Cloud, X-Soldier. It is 2 red, green, white, legendary creature with human soldier mercenary with haste. When Cloud enters, attach up to 1 target equipment you control to it. Whenever Cloud attacks, draw a card for each equipped attacking creature you control. Then if Cloud has power 7 or greater, create 2 treasure tokens. On the surface, this feels really strong. I know enough about Cloud to know that he's got a couple different swords, and I know that they've talked about the likelihood of them making those within the set, whether they're in the actual core set or in the commander deck. Either way, I'm assuming they'll do something with him where they either bring his power over 7, or if it's over 7, he gets certain additional benefits. But I mean, just being able to quick attach something to it, something like Colossus Hammer, when it enters with haste, you Colossus Hammer right off the bat, you can swing for 14. That's definitely a pretty solid start. And then, of course, drawing cards, at least 1, and creating some treasure tokens, 2, is just all around really good. This reminds me of Dogmeat from the Fallout commander decks, but I think this might actually be a little better. Perhaps the only difference being that Dogmeat's a little cheaper to play, but I think Cloud's going to give you a lot more bang for your buck in terms of the rewards, especially if the equipments that come out in the set are good and kind of work within his specialties. I also think it's very likely we get more Clouds in the actual set, obviously for standard and stuff, so it'll be something to keep an eye on. But overall, I think this is a very, very strong card. And finally, we've got Terra, Herald of Hope. She is red, white, black, legendary creature, human wizard warrior. With Trance, at the beginning of combat on your turn, mill 2 cards. Terra gains flying until end of turn. Whenever Terra deals combat damage to a player, you may pay 2. When you do, return target creature with power 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So the mill is solid. Obviously, definitely works well. I think with black and white, there's a lot of stuff that you can utilize enchantment stuff with to bring things back from the grave. But I don't know. I don't love this. It's not that it feels terrible or anything. But I mean, it's got to deal damage, you got to pay, and then you can bring a creature back, which is nice. I will say the fact that it's power 3 or less instead of mana value does obviously give you some additional options, but there's a lot going on there. The fact that she gives herself flying, though, means she's almost always going to be able to get through unless the opponent has something with reach, so there are some, upsides to that. I just don't, I have to look a little bit more into what targets are going to be good for this and kind of what people think about. And it may be such that it's good to do, we'll do a bit more of a deep dive on all of these, because as, we get more of an idea of what they might work with. These only came out a couple hours ago, so it's kind of hard to formulate like a strong opinion right off the initial reactions. But out of the 4, I think Cloud is the best. I think all of them definitely have potential, and a lot of it depends on what else we get in the set, and just also what we can kind of figure out as a community works well with them collectively. So let me know what you guys think. If you're excited for the Final Fantasy stuff, I know I am. Like I said, not super familiar with the games, but I think the art design is really cool. And I think it's going to, if any of the cards are like these, we've got a lot of stuff to look forward to. And I'm happy for anything that's going to breathe some life into Standard and maybe make that format a bit more intriguing. So, just to the general public, I mean, getting more people into it, maybe revitalizing it, bringing it back at a, competitive level, so on and so forth. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you in the next video.